Well, good evening. My name is Stephanie Dugo, and I am so excited to welcome you tonight to the St. Louis University Financial Aid webinar. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment in the Office of Admission, and I'm joined by my colleague, Hannah Smith from our Office of Student Financial Services. Before we get started, I just would like to go over a couple logistics about the webinar. This is, in fact, a webinar, so everyone's camera, video, and sound is off. The intent of the webinar is to share general information about the financial aid process and what your financial aid offer will look like when you receive it in the coming weeks. With that, and due to the volume of attendees, we will not be answering individualized questions in the Q&A section. After you receive your offer, we encourage you to contact your admission counselor to go over details. Also, the use of the chat will be for information that we are sharing to you. So we will share several different SLU websites with you and correspond with you during the presentation that way. So please navigate with us on your phone or computer if you'd like. But now I'd like to turn it over to our presenter tonight, Hannah Smith.
Thanks, Stephanie. And thank you all for joining us on your Wednesday evening to kind of go over your financial aid offer and hopefully anticipate some questions that you have at this point in the cycle as you're kind of navigating this college search and financial aid process with your student as a family. So tonight we are going to go over lots of different kind of financial aid type information. We're going to start with just general financial aid info, start with the types of financial aid that you might see on those different financial aid offers from different institutions. We'll also kind of talk through the application processes for all of those different types of aid so that you can make sure that you've got all of those boxes checked so that you are prepared when those financial aid offers come out. We're going to just touch on that free application for federal student aid, which is likely that application that you've already filled out to qualify for need-based aid from SLU and other institutions that are on your college search list. And then we're going to go over in detail what this St. Louis University financial aid offer looks like for 23-24. Like I said, so you can kind of anticipate some questions that you might have about this offer and familiarize yourself with the offer so that there's no surprises when your students actually receive this offer, and you can be armed with all of the information that you need to make a really informed college decision for your student and your family. So as we kind of go through, you'll see lots of different types of financial aid on these offers from institutions. So really all types of financial aid can boil down into two overarching categories. You have gift aid, which is made up of scholarships and grants. Now, typically scholarships is aid that is rewarding your student for some sort of achievements that they've been able to gain over their high school career. So this could be merit-based scholarships. Now, at St. Louis University, merit scholarships are offered with their admission offer, so you likely already have notification of these merit scholarships that your student has been awarded. It could also be some talent-based scholarships or athletic scholarships that come along with their athletic abilities and their continuation of athletics in their college years. Grants are pieces of aid that are typically need-based. So this could come from the federal government, this could come from the state, this could come from institutions themselves. But typically when we're talking about grants, they're going off of that free application for federal student aid and really determining what need your family has to be able to make college work for your family. We call this gift aid because scholarships and grants, that's free money that essentially just discounts that cost of attendance at institutions that your student is looking at, and typically doesn't require any payback or repayment on down the line. So that's gift aid. That's just a gift that's given to students in the form of that money that's going to come off of their cost. Now, self-help aid are things like loans that do require repayment on down the line, but can be a viable way to help with the cost of attendance kind of upfront. So these come in the form of federal direct student loans. These would be loans in the student's name, or Parent Plus loans or private or alternative loans. The Parent Plus loan, of course, would be in the parent's name, but private or alternative student loans could be in the student or parent name. and again, could just kind of help mitigate that cost of attendance up front. Of course, again, that does require repayment on down the line. And we're going to kind of break down these different loan programs and show you how these different options play out when covering that remaining balance on down the presentation as well. Now, self-help aid also encompasses work opportunities or employment opportunities like the federal work-study program. And this works a little bit differently than other types of aid that you might see on a financial aid offer, like scholarships, grants, loans. Employment opportunities actually require your student to go out and find a job on campus, work those hours, and earn that funding over the course of the academic year. So it's not automatic money in their pocket. They do get awarded that money throughout the year like they would a normal paycheck for any sort of part-time job. So while it can go towards the cost of attendance that's owed to the university, it can go towards tuition or room and board or fees at the institution. That's paid directly to the student first. And so they could turn around and pay it back to the university what they owe, or they could just use it for discretionary funds while they're away in college. As you'll see, there's quite a few expenses that you kind of have to anticipate that are in addition to tuition and fees and things that are actually billed to the university. And costs like that tend to be a little hidden, and families aren't anticipating those quite as much going into the college search process and thinking about sending their child off to college. These different types of aid, as I said, for the merit scholarships, you've likely already received notification of merit scholarships if you've been admitted to the university. And these were based on your application for admission, so GPA or test scores if you submitted those as part of your application for admission. And this likely was pretty consistent across the schools that you applied for admission to. Maybe they required an additional merit scholarship application, but a lot of schools will have that kind of wrapped up in that admission application. When we're talking about need-based aid, in the form of grants from the federal government, from the state, or from institutions themselves, we're talking about filing the free application for federal student aid. So this is a federal form that will determine your aid eligibility at all of those different funding sources. So first off, it determines your federal aid eligibility for things like federal Pell Grant or the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. It also makes you eligible for that federal student loan. So just by filing the FAFSA, you don't have to exhibit any need, quote unquote, and your student will still be able to get that federal student loan eligibility, which we'll see a little bit later on. Now, some institutions might also ask you to fill out the CSS profile. The CSS profile goes in much more depth into your income and asset information than is reported on the FAFSA. And this is typically asked for by institutions that are promising to meet a certain percentage of demonstrated need for their students. Typically, they're putting a lot of aid on the table for students that are admitted, and the CSS profile does require a little bit of a fee to be able to file. As a general rule, we like to say don't pay for free aid, but the CSS profile is one of those exceptions to that rule. St. Louis University does not require and does not accept the CSS profile. So the only need-based application that we have to make students eligible is that free application for federal student aid. Now, private or outside scholarships might also be a great way to kind of drive down that cost of attendance really anywhere you're looking to attend. And the general rule for these private or outside scholarships is just to start as local or as niche as possible. So narrow your demographic or your biographical information as much as possible and apply for those scholarships that apply to those kind of characteristics first. And then, consult your high school counselor. They typically have a really good source and well of information that, companies or outside funding sources are reaching out to counselors at the high school level to say, hey, advertise this scholarship opportunity to your student. We want to give $1,000 to a local student or $500 to a local student to help subsidize their cost of education. So these typically are smaller scholarships, and they're called private or outside scholarships just because they come from outside of the university. Some great starting places for private or outside scholarships can be these resources here. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. This is also on our website. We have a list of these private scholarship search engines as kind of a starting place to look for these private or outside scholarships. And really at this point, if you're wanting to hunt down additional scholarship dollars, it's going to be from outside sources. We really try as hard as we can at SLU to put as much money as we can up front in those merit scholarships for students. And so additional scholarship opportunities are going to be kind of found through private scholarship or outside scholarship sources. For local students, you definitely want to look at My Scholarship Central, St. Louis Graduates. Those are for local students only, and so can be a great way to really maximize your eligibility there and maximize your chances of actually getting some additional aid. So at these different institutions, typically you have to be admitted to all of the institutions that you're looking at, and likely have filed a FAFSA before that financial aid offer can be sent. So schools will kind of compile all of this information into a financial aid offer that will outline your costs associated with education at that institution, all of your aid that you're eligible for, and then essentially just gives you a remaining balance, a bottom line of here is what it's going to cost to attend our institution for a year. And the financial aid offer philosophy is very different at different institutions. And so it can be kind of hard to compare apples to apples looking at your different offers, because things might be formatted differently. Schools might be communicating completely different information to you at that point in time when they're showing you that offer. And so we're going to kind of break down what this SLU offer looks like, and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense as you're looking at your SLU offer, certainly, but looking at offers from other institutions as well to kind of break down, okay, what are they telling me the costs are? And then what are they telling me are, is my eligible aid? And, what costs are they showing me? What does this remaining balance look like? So before we jump into the offer, I just want to mention how that you'll be actually be able to receive this financial aid offer. So your student will be emailed to their personal email that's listed on their application for admission and their SLU email. And then it will also go to the parent email that's listed on that free application for federal student aid. So it'll go to all three of those emails. Here in the next couple of weeks, those will be sent, and there's no login required. You'll get the email, and there's a link in the email that you click, and it'll take you into a browser to view your specific individual financial aid offer from SLU. If you've opted into text messaging, it will also be text messaged to you in a message. And again, you can just click it and open it on your phone right then and there. So when you get this email, you'll click that link, you'll open it in a browser, and you'll be able to see your personalized affordability plan from SLU. So first off, you'll see this 23-24 kind of heading showing you this is your financial aid offer. You'll see your first and last name, and then you will see right at the top of the offer the amount of gift aid that you've been awarded from St. Louis University. Now, this is going to combine all of those funding sources and show you grants and scholarships that you've been awarded from the federal government, from the state, from institution like SLU. You'll also, right underneath this heading, have your admission counselor contact information. So your admission counselor is your point of contact through your entire college search. And so your financial aid can be discussed with them individually. Once these offers are released, you'll have their contact information right up at the top. And then they'll be reaching out to you about virtual or in-person opportunities to meet with them, to go over this offer in much more detail, go line by line and just talk through every single component, make sure that you don't have any questions about any pieces of aid on there, and then kind of talk next steps about, okay, now that we have this financial aid offer, now that we have the bottom line, the financials are no longer a mystery. What steps do I need to take to kind of finalize my enrollment at SLU? The first thing After you scroll down, that you'll see as part of this offer is the estimated cost of attendance. So these are estimated numbers at this point, but it will be pretty similar to what you will see on your actual financial aid offer from SLU. So you'll see these, it's broken out into direct costs and indirect costs as part of this cost of attendance. Your direct costs are what's actually going to be billed through the university, what's going to be owed to your student account. So this is things like tuition, mandatory fees, room and board, or housing and meals if you're planning on living on campus. And these numbers are going to differ a little bit based on your actual registration and actual billed costs. So your tuition is, we have a block tuition that's awarded to in-state, out-of-state students, international students. We all have just one tuition rate for undergraduate students. And that's the same if you're enrolled in 12 to 18 hours. So this is the tuition rate that you'll see for your enrollment for each semester. Now, these fees are made up of our university fee and our activities fee. For full-time students, those are going to be pretty similar, but you might have additional fees that are associated with specific classes that you're registered in or your specific program that you're pursuing. Housing and meals is going to be the most flexible number here that can flex a little bit up or a little bit down based on your specific residence hall that you're planning on living in. And then certainly if you're planning on commuting, living at home, and just coming into campus daily for classes, this number is going to look very different for those students as well. So those are your direct billed costs. That's what's going to be owed to the university. Your indirect costs are estimates for things like books and supplies, personal expenses, transportation, miscellaneous costs. These are kind of the additional costs to consider when you're sending your kid off to college, and something that a lot of families aren't really kind of factoring into every single institution that they're looking at. So this additional $6,000, like I said, is an estimate for these things. Not every student is going to spend $1,000 a year on books and supplies, but this total cost of attendance represents your student's maximum budget of aid eligibility that they're eligible for that academic year. So they can have scholarships, grants, and take out loans up to this full cost of attendance. And we'll kind of talk through, you'll see how that figure kind of flows throughout the offer as we talk through different components as well. So after you see cost, you'll see your students' individual grants and scholarships that they've been awarded. Now there's different categories for institutional aid, for state aid, for federal aid, and then for private scholarships. So if your students have any of those different types of aid, those different components will show up here in the grants and scholarships section. For this student, Billy Billiken, our sample student here, he just has SLU aid. So he has his SLU University tuition scholarship of $22,000 a year, and then he qualified for some need-based grant for about $15,000 a year, bringing him up to about $37,000 in total gift aid. So again, these scholarships, these grants, they don't require repayment. And these will roll from year to year, and we'll talk about renewing aid here in a bit when we're done with the offer. Also built into the offer is our comprehensive list of private and outside scholarships out on our website. So if you are looking at this number and saying, we need a little bit more to be able to make this work, you can click that Explore Now button and it'll take you out to our website where you can see those private scholarship search engines and see if your student might be eligible for any of those outside or private scholarships and apply for them directly there. Now, after you see your grants and scholarships, your gift aid, it's going to show you two remaining balances. So it's going to show you estimated net direct cost after gift aid, and it's also going to show you estimated costs of attendance after gift aid. So if you'll remember, the direct cost was just the billed costs. So that's why they're a little bit less. That cost of attendance is including those estimates for things like books and supplies and personal expenses and things like that. So that's why you see the discrepancy between the two. But just know if you only want to see the figure of what you're going to owe to the institution, you're going to really focus on that direct cost calculation. If you really want to know, okay, how can we, get loans to cover things like books and supplies, you're going to want to focus on that cost of attendance after gift aid calculation. After gift aid, it'll also show any loan options. So federal student loans will show on there. As I mentioned, just by filing the FAFSA, your student is eligible for these federal direct student loans. So they would get, most often freshmen are going to see $5,500 in loan eligibility from the federal government, and they could be eligible for a portion of that $5,500 to be subsidized. Now, the subsidized portion here of the $3,500, that portion is not going to be accruing interest while the student is in school. But repayment for both the subsidized and unsubsidized portion of these federal student loans is deferred. So there's no requirements to start repayment while the student is in school. And this is through undergraduate and graduate programs. They would be eligible for an in-school deferment as long as they're enrolled full-time in any kind of degree-seeking program. So if your student is in like a PT, AT, OT, accelerated programs, they're going on straight to graduate school, if they're going to law school or med school, they would be able to kind of defer repayment for all of these loans until after they were graduated from those programs as well. Now, we don't automatically accept loans as part of your financial aid offer because they do require repayment. So we have your scholarships and grants will automatically be accepted for you. You don't have to formally go in and say, yes, I want that free money, but you do have to make a decision on those loans because it does have implications for the student on down the line. So there is a way that you can accept portions or you can decline portions of this loan. If you don't take any action, no money will be borrowed in your name. So you don't have to worry about this automatically going on or automatically being borrowed in your name without you knowing. Now, after you see gift aid and loans and the student loans, you'll see the calculation again of direct cost after gift aid and loans. That shows you that remaining cost of about $25,000. That's showing you what is actually going to be owed to the university. And then that graph on the right is showing you cost of attendance minus gift aid and loans. So that remaining cost is showing you what's owed to the university, that $25,000, as well as that additional $6,000 of estimates for things like books and supplies, transportation, those sorts of expenses. So again, if you're really just worried about what's going to be owed to the university, focus on this direct cost after gift aid and loans. If you're worried about, what you might be eligible for to take out in loans or accept additional scholarships up to, focus on this cost of attendance minus gift aid and student loans. Now, kind of separate from the other types of aid, you'll see this additional funding options and federal work study is listed here. We list it this way because of how it works a little bit differently. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this money doesn't automatically pay out to students. They have to find a job and work those hours to be able to get those funds in their pocket. And even then, it's paid directly to students. And so they have the autonomy then to put it towards their direct costs or use it for those discretionary expenses. So while this does offer a little bit of cushion for students and a little bit of protection if they need some discretionary income, we keep it separate from this direct cost because it pays out over the course of the year, and the jobs and the opportunities on campus are subject to change kind of from year to year. And it does take some impetus on the student to go out and find a job on campus that's federal work study eligible and actually work those hours to be able to get those monies. Now at the bottom here, you'll see a little disclaimer that there could be some additional costs added to your bill as you finalize enrollment. So as I mentioned, when we're talking about this direct cost, it could be things like course fees associated with specific classes that you're enrolled in for that semester. It could be program fees. So if you're in a program that requires a lot of technical training, for instance, our flight science program, those have some pretty hefty course fees associated with your flight courses. So you'll definitely want to kind of keep those things on your radar as you're planning for that actual bill to come out. Health insurance is another thing that all students might see on that bill. It's required for all full-time students to be covered under health insurance. It doesn't have to be the university health insurance. But it will automatically be billed to student accounts until families go in and formally waive that coverage. So you can start waiving the university health coverage starting July 1st in our student health portal through Aetna, and essentially just have to show proof of outside coverage that that student is covered outside of the university, and then that charge will fall off. If your student is planning on bringing a car to campus, parking could also be an additional cost that is added to your bill. It doesn't have to be added to your student account, but that is one means of payment. And then you could also just pay for the parking pass for the year on a credit card or via bank account, whatever is most convenient for you and your family. And then at the bottom of the offer, you will see next steps. So once you have all of this financial information and can kind of digest these numbers and wrap your head around this remaining balance, we kind of provide some resources and some next steps in your college search process. So this first link is going to take you to our financial aid page, where it shows you financial aid checklists, things that you have to complete as part of the financial aid process. But it also shows you financing examples. So we're going to kind of talk through what that looks like in covering that remaining balance. But if you're curious about what that looks like for you or for your remaining balance, there's resources out there to be able to kind of break that down in manageable ways. If you haven't visited us on campus yet, there's a link to our visit page where you can see all of the opportunities to attend a daily visit or an admitted student event this spring. We would love to have you on campus. And then there is a process called verification, where about a third of FAFSAs filed every year are flagged for verification from the federal government. And schools have to complete the verification process, which might require some additional documentation about income or tax information from the family. So this Complete Now button on the financial aid offer will send you out to our online forms platform, register your account, and then your student will be able to see all of the documentation that we need to be able to verify their FAFSA information out there. If you're not selected for verification, you will not see this next step on your financial aid offer, so no need to worry about completing verification if you don't see that on the bottom of the offer. Now, one of the #1 questions that we always get from families and parents especially is, okay, well, this is for freshman year. What happens for subsequent years? How do they keep rolling this aid from year to year? So we have a 2.0 cumulative GPA requirement for all of our SLU aid. So if your student has qualified for a merit scholarship, if they have some grant assistance, SLU grant, all of that is only required a 2.0 to be able to roll from year to year. And we check this once a year at the end. And so it'll always go based on cumulative GPA. So what this looks like, if your student has kind of a rough transition freshman year and they fall below that 2.0 cumulative GPA, we'll run that check at the end of freshman year. And then they have a probation year, essentially, where they would get to keep their scholarship, but then we would check at the end of their sophomore year as well. And if they're still falling under that 2.0 cumulative GPA, at that point, the scholarship would be removed for that subsequent year. However, students are able to appeal one time to keep their scholarship. So at the end of their sophomore year, they're still falling below that 2.0. They could file a scholarship appeal, cite, why their GPA is what it is, extenuating circumstances, kind of pull some information from offices across campus if your student is getting a tutor or they're getting counseling or things like that, and they are committed to pulling that GPA up and getting on a path to be better over the course of their next 2 years, then that appeal could be granted. They could have that scholarship for their junior year as well. And so really we essentially guarantee that scholarship for at least the first 3 years. We do, as long as the student is maintaining the 2.0 cumulative GPA, we award our scholarships for 10 semesters. So students have a little bit of additional flexibility to be able to use those scholarships in an additional semester or an additional year if they need to take a 5th year. All of our programs at the undergraduate level still are kind of slated to fit within 4 years. Like I said, some students need some additional flexibility, and so we don't want to be a burden on the financial end of them having to worry about keeping that scholarship for that extra semester or extra year. Now, once you have this financial aid offer, as I mentioned, and you can kind of wrap your head around some of these numbers and be able to see feasibly what this remaining balance is going to look like, really there's 3 ways to be able to cover that remaining balance with the university. And the first is out of pocket. So you can either pay this in full at the beginning of each semester, or we do offer payment plans for families to be able to enroll in each semester. This would cut the remaining balance into 5 payments over the course of the semester. So payments would be on the first of the month, August through December for fall, and then January through May for spring. You could also use college savings plans or 529 plans to be able to cover some of this remaining balance kind of out of pocket. And then if you are looking at financing any portion of that remaining balance, there's kind of 2 ways that you can go with that. So first option is that Parent Plus loan. This is a federal loan that would be in the parent's name, and it is credit qualifying. It requires an additional Parent Plus application out on studentaid.gov where you filed the FAFSA. So whoever's wanting to borrow that in the parent's name would go out there, you would sign in with your FSA ID that you use to sign the FAFSA and submit that Parent Plus application. The interest rate for 22-23 for the Parent Plus loan was 7.54%. And there is a bit of an origination fee that comes out of that net amount that's sent to the school to pay off that balance. And the estimated monthly payment here is about $118 per $10,000 borrowed. Typically for the Parent Plus loan, repayment will go into effect 60 days after that loan is paid in full. So if you think you're taking out this Parent Plus loan for the academic year, half is going to pay in fall, in August towards that fall balance, half is going to pay in January. And so repayment would then go into effect March or April of that year that you took out that Parent Plus loan. And for the Parent Plus loan, it's a standard 10-year repayment. So we're taking that interest rate of 7.54%. That's locked in for the life of the loan until that's paid off. Additional financing options could look like private student loans. Now, these would be either in the student's name or in the parent's name, but this is also credit qualifying. And so the majority of applications that are, if the student is listed as the borrower, would likely require a parent as a cosigner on these private or alternative loans. We estimate about a 10% interest rate out here for these private student loans. And really, name of the game for private or alternative loans is just kind of doing your research, seeing what you can get pre-approved for. We do have a preferred lender list out on our website that shows you lending institutions that our current students have loans through and are helping their cost of attendance through those lenders. And so you're able to look at that preferred lender list and kind of see what interest rates or what terms and conditions might work best for your family, and start getting pre-approved for those come May or June. Just want to make some little announcements about outside or private scholarships. So if your students have been awarded an outside or private scholarship, you can send a notification of those to your student's admission counselor or to us in Student Financial Services, and we're happy to put those on their financial aid offer. Those will show up as an estimated resource until we actually get those funds from that outside or private funding source and are able to convert that into a private scholarship. But if your student has already received notification that they've been awarded an outside scholarship, they can go ahead and send us that notification, and we can make sure that that's included on the offer so that you see it against that remaining balance. If you are planning on using a college savings plan or 529 plan to be able to pay for some of these expenses at SLU, we work with lots of different providers, and name of the game here is just to make sure that you reach out to your provider and kind of make yourself knowledgeable on their process for authorizing funds to come directly from the provider to SLU, especially for Missouri residents. It is best to not let that money go through your hands first, and just to pay that directly to the institution that your student is attending. All right, so at this point, I will open it up to questions. We've got some in the Q&A, some that have come in the chat.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hannah. So I will go ahead and start with some of the questions that we've received. They are some of the typical questions that we do receive annually about financial aid and that process to kind of help our students and families. Can you please go over the EFC again? How is it calculated, and is it the same each year?
Yeah, so your EFC, or expected family contribution, that is the calculation that's done by filling out that free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. And essentially, it will take the parent financial and asset information and student financial and asset information and give us a number that the federal government is saying this is what you could feasibly put towards an education in this academic year. So we know that it's not a perfect science, and it also doesn't exactly represent the amount that you would be responsible for paying for at institutions. So that expected family contribution isn't going to necessarily equate to your remaining balance on financial aid offers, but that's the number that we would use to determine your need-based aid eligibility at the federal, state, and institutional levels. And then it would, I just wanted to mention the yearly thing. So you would have to file your FAFSA each year, and your EFC could fluctuate based on the tax and income and asset information as of the day that you're filing the FAFSA. So it could fluctuate throughout your time, but we will guarantee that aid that you initially qualified for. So if it's a SLU grant, that's going to be set in stone for 4 years, regardless of fluctuations in your EFC.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Hannah. Just to kind of dig a little bit deeper into a couple of the things you said, if a family were to see a SLU grant or a Pell Grant or Missouri State Grant, how is that determined? Is there a cutoff, or what context is that determined?
Yeah, so it's going to differ pretty wildly based on where that funding is coming from. Federal sources are going to require lower EFCs to be able to qualify for things like the federal Pell Grant or the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. State funding has some different thresholds for students and that expected family contribution, and so does SLU aid. So if you're curious about those different thresholds or things like that, you can see what you might be eligible for in terms of federal aid on your student aid report based on that EFC, and then lots of information out on the state website as well if you qualify for that state aid. Typically the cutoff there for the need-based grant for Missouri students, Access Missouri, is 12,000 EFC. They did bump it to 15,000 last year, but that's pretty typical in that ballpark. And then really we can get into $30,000 and $40,000 EFCs and still be awarding need-based aid at the institutional level.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. To dig into, there's quite a few questions about scholarships.
Mhm.
So I kind of have a four-parter for you. Are there still scholarships through SLU beyond the financial aid offer? Can you touch on that again?
Yeah, so really at this point in the cycle, those merit scholarships are kind of set in stone. There are still certain populations of students that might be waiting to hear about those competitive scholarships that they've applied for, like the Presidential Scholarship or the MLK scholarships. But really at this point, we have the scholarships that are available for incoming students. And so additional scholarship opportunities would be through outside or private sources.
Perfect. And how does SLU handle those outside scholarships? Are you able to combine them with your merit-based?
Yes. So stackable or stacking is a term that you might hear a lot in the financial aid process. We are an institution that does stack aid. And so essentially all that means is your merit scholarship is able to be combined with other sources of funding. If you're bringing in outside or private scholarships, we will put those on top of the aid that we've already put on the table from SLU. So you're able to take that funding and put that towards, any direct billed cost. Now, I would say for those outside or private scholarships, they're going to stipulate what exactly those scholarships can go towards. And so they might say this is a tuition only award, or this can go towards education related expenses. And so we'll kind of take the lead of that outside or private funding source to determine where exactly that money can go, but we will stack it on top of that merit or need-based aid as appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And then sometimes there's some situations that maybe happen because, as you mentioned, we're submitting our tax documents from 2 years before, right? The prior.
Mm-hmm.
What does SLU have a special circumstance process, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So, as of the day you filed your FAFSA, you're having to report tax and income information from 2 years ago. So we understand that could have changed drastically for you as a family, and going into the college process, that can be really scary. So we do have a process that we can basically reevaluate that expected family contribution and see if any additional aid can be awarded. And we call that the special circumstance process. You might hear it called professional judgment, or, a lot of schools will call it special circumstance, but that is a Google form on our website that you're able to fill out to kind of tell us a little bit more about how your circumstances have changed. And then we will likely collect some additional information or documentation from you to prove those circumstances, and then see how we can adjust that free application for federal student aid and see if any additional aid can be generated.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so that would include all different types of circumstances, right?
Yeah. So we do have a list of circumstances that we will review for out on our website. Those are things like loss or a change in income, divorce or separation, loss of a parent or a spouse, things like that we're able to, we know that drastically change financial situations from year to year. And so we're able to review for those and see, like I said, if any additional aid can be generated.
Perfect. Thanks, Hannah. And then another common question that we get, and that's in the chat, is, does the award stay the same each year? And if anything changes, what does change?
Yeah, so your aid will, for the most part, kind of roll from year to year as long as you're maintaining that 2.0 cumulative GPA. Things that might change are things that are a little bit out of our control, like federal aid or state aid eligibility. As your EFC changes, your eligibility might change for those aid components as well. So for federal Pell Grant, for instance, if you qualify for a certain amount 1 year based on that expected family contribution, and then your expected family contribution that next year goes up, you could see a decrease in that amount of Pell Grant that you're getting from the federal government. And so you would need to continue filing the FAFSA each year. And as long as nothing changes drastically in your expected family contribution, then that aid should remain relatively the same throughout year to year.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And then one of the questions is, if I am within 25 miles of campus, my counselor told me that there is an exemption process to possibly commute. Would that change my offer if I was living at home with my parents within that commutable distance?
Yeah, so we formulate financial aid offers based on that housing plan that you put on the FAFSA. So if you indicated that you were planning on living on campus on the FAFSA, then that's how your aid is going to be packaged. You'll see costs associated with that room and board on campus. And then your need-based grants, if you qualify for any of those from SLU, will be based on that cost of attendance. Now, if you decide to move off campus or live off campus and commute, your costs would look pretty different in terms of that room and board figure being basically subtracted from your cost of attendance. But because that changes the amount of need that you have, your need-based grant could change based on that housing plan change. But we're more than happy to kind of counsel students through what those changes look like. Your admission counselor will be able to kind of put together an estimate for you to show you if your offer is based on campus, this is what your aid looks like. And then if you're considering commuting, here's what your costs would look like. And here's how your aid would change to kind of show you what that remaining balance would look like realistically on both options.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And do you know, can freshmen have cars on campus, and what would those parking costs look like?
Yes, so all students are eligible to have a car on campus, including freshmen. And those different parking rates differ based on what lots you're in, if you're a commuter or a resident, if you want to be in a garage and have covered parking, or if you are just in a surface lot. So we can post a link to our different parking rates so you can kind of see what those levels look like and see what might work best for you.
Wonderful. And if I needed to take some classes in the summer, are summer sessions covered? I've heard a little bit about the Billiken Promise.
Yeah, so typically your merit scholarships and your need-based aid wouldn't cover summer semester, but we do new this year have an award called the SLU Difference Award, which would allow you to have a bit of scholarship that you could put towards those summer sessions. We also have a winter term that if you needed to take a couple classes in that winter term, you could put that SLU Difference Award towards that term as well. And then if you're not planning on, taking any winter term or summer term classes, you just want to take fall and spring, that SLU Difference Award can also go towards your graduate program if you're continuing at SLU after you graduate with your undergrad. So for new freshmen, you'll have $10,000 in that SLU Difference Award to be able to put towards that winter term or summer term of your choosing. And then, like I said, if you don't use any of that $10,000 during your undergrad, you can put that towards your graduate degree.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Kind of continuing on with that Billiken Promise, the 10 semester, can you expand on how that works for scholarships, particularly with students that are interested in occupational therapy, physical therapy, social work, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that 10 semester guarantee is for your undergraduate years. So you would have your merit scholarship and your SLU grant for those 5 years, as long as you're pursuing your undergraduate degree. Now for degree plans like, AT, OT, PT, those that you're 4 years in undergrad and then you're transitioning to your graduate studies, you're still staying at SLU. Unfortunately, that scholarship wouldn't continue on into your grad years. So as soon as you're done with your undergrad aid kind of expires, and then you would move on to eligibility as a graduate student for graduate aid.
Perfect. But the SLU difference could help offset that, right?
Yes. Yeah. The SLU difference is, I kind of think about it as like a separate little pot of money that you can draw from throughout your time. So you can use it, you can use $2,000 for a summer term in between your freshman and sophomore year, and then you would have $8,000 to then use towards another summer term, or, you could kind of save that for your graduate program moving on.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Hannah. In addition to that, let me look at some of the other questions that we're getting asked. Can you talk a little bit about international student scholarship? Is there anything else that those students need to do?
Yeah, so for international students, you would be eligible for merit scholarships like domestic students are through your application for admission. So you might have already gotten notification of those merit-based scholarships. And then we don't have any need-based aid opportunities for international students, but there is some additional aid opportunities if you want to reach out to your admission counselor to be able to be nominated for some additional international gateway, we call it, through your counselor at your high school.
Perfect. Thanks, Hannah. And I know you did mention in the presentation about the timing of our financial aid offers, but can you remind us, when do you think the financial aid offers will be shared, and how will families receive that? So what should they look for?
Yeah, so just here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be sending those emails out. They will not be physically mailed to your houses, but you'll get them emailed to the personal email for the student that's listed on their application for admission, their SLU email. So if they haven't activated their SLU email address, they can go ahead and do that so that they can kind of anticipate that email coming there. And then it'll also go to the parent email that's listed on the FAFSA. So whoever's listed as the parent on the FAFSA, that it would go to that parent email as well. And it'll come, like I said, here in the next couple of weeks, you'll get that email, and it'll just be a link that you click on within the body of that email. There's no additional login information or authentication that needs to happen. If you receive that email, you just click the link and it'll open right in the browser.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. And that brings up a couple different great points for everyone to know. I know there were some very specific questions in the Q&A. When you do receive the offer that Hannah just mentioned, you will also receive all of the contact information for your admission counselor, who is also your financial aid counselor at this time. And so when you do receive that, if you have any specific questions about what if this happens, or what if that happens, or can you explain this to me, our admission staff is more than happy to work with you and to explain all of that to you. You'll receive their email as well as their phone number. In addition, one of the things that we will be doing is we are offering both virtual and in-person financial aid and enrollment appointments. And so we're happy to walk you through the financial aid offer, as well as all of your next steps at SLU. And as we are kind of running down on time, I'll just kind of mention a few of the next steps before we do end this session. And so my colleague will probably drop those next steps link right into the chat. And so the first thing that you'll want to do is make sure you access your MySLU portal. And so your MySLU portal is different than that application portal where you submitted additional applications or anything along those lines. And it does have what we call an OCTA multi-factor authentication. And so on our website, there is actually a video that will walk you through step by step for that MySLU portal access. And so one of the things is that you really have to follow it step by step in those instructions. If you miss a step, it won't let you access that because it is protecting your information. And that is your SLU account that stays with you your entire time as a SLU student. And so please make sure to follow that. If you do run into any problems, part of the next steps is actually who to contact. Our ITS department is wonderful and they will help walk you through that. Their direct number is 314-977-4000 and they'll help you with that My SLU portal. Once you go to that SLU Authenticate Your Tools tab, that is actually where you'll do all of your next steps. And so, of course, we hope once you receive your financial aid offer that all of you are going to become Billikens. And so in order to secure your spot in the class, you do have until May 1st. And so that is a $500 non-refundable enrollment deposit, and you'll submit that through the payment suite. So you'll go to the payment suite button in the tools tab, and you will actually submit the e-deposit and submit that deposit. For our international students, you can submit it through the payment suite, or you can also submit it through Flywire, and you can reference that on the next steps for international students. The next thing that you'll want to do is submit your housing contract. That typically does take 24 to 48 hours before it's available for you to submit. So if you were to submit your enrollment deposit on a Friday night, it'll happen on Monday because there is a manual component to that housing contract. The next thing you'll want to do is register for SLU 101, which is our 2-day orientation program where you'll confirm your classes, you'll meet with your academic advisor, you'll meet with other future Billikens, and you'll get all of that situated. And then, of course, last but not least, you want to make sure you take your placement exams before May 15th. That is how our academic advisors will guide you in the classes that you'll be taking that freshman year. And of course, our admission staff is here to help guide you all throughout the whole process. And so once you do receive that financial aid offer, you are welcome to reach out to your admission counselor and they will help you with that. And I will say that is the last for tonight. We want to thank you again for attending our Understanding Your Financial Aid offer. And of course, we will be posting the video on our website in the comments. But again, thank you so much for attending, and we hope you have a great evening. Thanks so much.